Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Beatles Forever, The Beatles on This Day. Today, we're going to see what the Beatles were up to around the date of June 17th. First up, Paul McCartney purchases Hyde Park Farm in Kintyre, Scotland. This happened on a Friday, the 17th of June in 1966. In an attempt to protect his earnings from the taxman, Paul McCartney's financial advisors suggested he invest property. On this day, his purchase of Hyde Park Farm in Campbelltown, near the Mull of Kintyre, was completed. The three-bedroom farmhouse had an asking price of £35,000 and came with 183 acres of land. It was previously owned by a local farmer, Mr. Brown, and his wife, who had lived there for 19 years before moving to Campbelltown. Paul McCartney said in 1966, "It's 200 acres and a farmhouse as well. It was well worth the money as far as I'm concerned. But I don't think I'm a big property tycoon. I only buy places I like." The farm was in a largely dilapidated state. McCartney's girlfriend, Jane Asher, had encouraged him to buy the property as a refuge from Beatlemania, although it wasn't until he married Linda Eastman in 1969 that the renovations began. Paul McCartney, from the book Many Years From Now by Barry Miles, said, "Linda said, we could do this place up. And I never thought of that. I thought it just stayed how you bought it. I just wasn't enterprising enough to actually think. We could clean this place up. Linda really turned me on to it. I quite liked it before. I liked its isolation, and I liked the privacy and the end-of-the-world remoteness compared to a city." Hyde Park was situated at the top of a hill near a small loch and overlooked Marchhannes Bay. The Mull of Kintyre was, of course, popularized by McCartney in Wing's best-selling 1977 single of the same name. Our next story, Radio Pop Go the Beatles. This happened on a Monday, the 17th of June, 1963. The initial run of the Beatles' BBC radio show, Pop Go the Beatles, was intended to have 4 editions. The last of these was recorded on the 17th of June, 1963, though more were to follow once the BBC realized they had a hit show. The session took place at the BBC's Maida Vale studios. The Beatles arrived at 10:30 a.m. and rehearsed and recorded 6 songs. I Saw Her Standing There, Anna, Go to Him, Boys, Chains, P.S. I Love You, and Twist and Shout. The recording of P.S. I Love You is the only known surviving BBC version, although they are known to have performed it on 2 1962 sessions as well. The version of Boys, meanwhile, was released on Baby It's You EP in 1995, as well as on the 2013's On Air Live at the BBC Volume 2, which also included the recordings of Chains and P.S. I Love You. This half-hour 4th edition of Pop Go the Beatles was first broadcast on the Tuesday, 25th of June, 1963, from 5 p.m. The guests were the Bachelors. Afterwards, the Beatles ate in the BBC staff canteen, accompanied by photographer Dezo Hoffman, who had taken a number of pictures during the session. They all then went outside the studio to Delaware Road for a separate photo session before the Beatles returned to Liverpool. Next, the Beatles get back to stream on Disney Plus in November. This happened on a Thursday, the 17th of June, 2021. Peter Jackson's documentary, The Beatles Get Back, is ready to stream exclusively on Disney Plus November 2021. The 3-part documentary is to roll out on the digital service on 25, 26, and 27 November, with each episode lasting approximately 2 hours. Directed by 3-time Oscar-winning filmmaker Peter Jackson, who did the Lord of the Rings trilogy and They Shall Not Grow Old, The Beatles Get Back takes audience back in time to the band's intimate recording sessions during a pivotal moment in music history. The documentary showcases the warmth, camaraderie, and creative genius that defined the legacy of the iconic foursome, compiled from over 60 hours of unseen footage shot in January 1969 by Michael Lindsay Hogg, and more than 150 hours of unheard audio, all of which has been brilliantly restored. Jackson is the only person in 50 years to have been given access to these private film archives. The Beatles Get Back is the story of John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr as they planned their first live show in over 2 years, capturing the writing and rehearsing of 14 new songs, originally intended for release on an accompanying live album. The documentary features, for the first time in its entirety, the Beatles' last live performance as a group, the unforgettable rooftop concert on London's Savile Row, as well as other songs and classic compositions featured on the band's final 2 albums, Abbey Road and Let It Be. The Beatles Get Back is being made with the enthusiastic support of Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr, Yoko Ono Lennon, and Olivia Harrison. Now we have the Wings rehearse in Nashville. This happened on a Monday, the 17th of June in 1974. Wings rehearsed in Nashville, Tennessee on the 17th of June, 1974. The rehearsals took place at the farm owned by songwriter Claude Curly Putman Jr. Wings stayed on the farm, which they rented for $2,000 a week, and rehearsed in the garage. On this day, they primarily worked on the song Bluebird. Afterwards, Linda McCartney went shopping for gifts for Paul's 32nd birthday. Her main present, Bill Black's upright bass from Elvis Presley era, had already been procured. And our last story, recording Pure Gold, This Be Called a Song by Ringo Starr. This happened on a Thursday, the 17th of June in 1976, at the Cherokee Studios, Los Angeles. Producer Arif Mardin. Ringo Starr worked on 2 songs for his 5th studio album, Ringo's Rotogravar, on the 17th of June, 1976. The backing track of Pure Gold had been recorded on June 3rd. It was written by Starr's former Beatle bandmate, Paul McCartney, who with Linda performed the backing vocals during a break from Wings over the World Tour during the overdub session on this day. So Ringo Starr said in Cream magazine, October 1976, him and Linda came down and I'm the hustler. I said, "Do you want to sing?" At that time of the night, it was about 8 o'clock, they said, No. So we went out for dinner and ate, and they had a few drinks. Then we came back and wandered around the studio, and they decided they were ready to sing. The 3 of us were out there, and I was a bit tipsy, as they say, so I'm shouting along with them, and Arif saying, "We got you, we got your vocal down, so back off." So we let the stars take over. We love each other, and there they are. Although the McCartneys did not participate, also recorded on this day were additional vocals for This Be Called a Song, the backing track of which had been recorded on the 25th of May. One of the other backing singers of the session was Joe Bean Esposito. So Joe Bean Esposito, in a March 1st interview in 2021, stated, Vinny Pancia, who's a very famous record producer, in fact, I'm doing an album with him right now, called me one day and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Nothing." He said, "I have a session. You want to come sing?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So we're singing in the car, and he doesn't tell me whose session it is. I walk into the studio, Cherokee Sound Studios, just a great moment in my life, and there is Ringo Starr. And then I see Arif Mardin, the legendary performer from Atlantic Records. And who comes in unannounced 20 minutes later? Paul McCartney and Linda McCartney. And now I'm singing with Melissa Manchester and Vinny and myself, and we're doing background vocals. I forget which song it was, and the 2 of the Beatles are looking at me. And I'm thinking to myself, you gotta be kidding me. I just got to LA, and this is the first thing I'm doing. I called Eddie on the phone, and I said, 2 of the Beatles are here. I can't believe it. I'm never leaving. This is the greatest. And we were just flipping out. That's how I got to sing on the album, through Vinny. I will end the video here. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you haven't subscribed, if you could do so, it would help the channel to grow, as well as give it a thumbs up. It's all a great help. And if you haven't clicked on the notification bell, if you could do that, it lets you know when a video is posted. More importantly, I want to wish everyone a good day, and tune in again soon for another episode of The Beatles Forever, The Beatles on This Date. Thank you. Bye.